Good day everyone, my name is Ina Grace A. Caudilia and I will discuss about the olfactory system. First, let us define olfactory system. The olfactory system or sense of smell is the sensory system used for smelling. Olfaction is one of the special senses that have directly associated specific organs. Most mammals and reptiles have a main olfactory system and an accessory olfactory system. Olfactory sensations are triggered by chemical substances of very different kinds, which are difficult to group under a single common denominator. Sense and associated olfactory sensations are not nearly as easy to measure or map as stimuli and observations based on light and sound. After all, a scent has no wavelength or other easily measurable property. Our knowledge of the operation of the sense of smell is so poor that we do not know exactly what properties of chemical substances cause the sensations. It is possible for people to lose their ability to distinguish certain smells to a greater or lesser extent through conditioning. For example, members of a particular culture may develop extreme sensitivity to certain smells. We have the so-called main olfactory system and an accessory olfactory system, wherein the main olfactory system detects airborne substances while the accessory system senses fluid phase stimuli. The ability to smell comes from specialized sensory cells called olfactory sensory neurons, which are found in a small patch of tissue high inside the nose. These cells connect directly to the brain, and the chemicals themselves which activate the olfactory system, generally at very low concentrations, are called odorants. Odors can interact with their environment in all kinds of ways before we perceive them. Only in the second half of the 20th century have researchers developed good olfactometers, as you can see in the picture. It is an apparatus for administering carefully calculated quantities of odors. Research is further complicated by the fact that people display wide differences both in their sensitivity to smells and in their appreciation of smells. All kinds of diseases or congenital defects may underlie these differences, but even among normal, healthy people, the sense of smell varies enormously.
In olfactory receptors, the gaseous molecules of such chemicals can be carried some distance through the air from their point of origin to the sense organ. Activated olfactory receptors are the initial player in a signal transduction cascade, which ultimately produces a nerve impulse which is transmitted to the brain. There are 7 primary odors: the capricious, musky, floral, pepperminty, pungent, ethereal, and putrid. Later, I will describe to you the real-life smells of these 7 primary odors. The one involved in emotional and autonomic response to odor is the entorhinal cortex with amygdala. Kaya minsan kapag nakaamoy tayo ng certain smell, naaalala natin yung mga bagay or yung mga tao na connected or associated dito. The piriform cortex has 2 major divisions with anatomically distinct organizations and functions. One is the anterior piriform cortex or APC, which is better associated with determining the chemical structure of the odorant molecule, and the second one is the posterior piriform cortex or PPC, which is best known for its strong role in categorizing odors. Mechanism of olfactory coding and perception. Olfactory mucosa, located high inside the nasal cavity, is the site of olfactory transduction. It contains olfactory receptor neurons. The mucus of nasal passage contains mucopolysaccharides, salts, enzymes, and antibodies. They are highly important as the olfactory neurons provide the direct passage for infections to pass the brain. Here's how the olfactory system works and processes signals through the brain. When the odorant molecule passes through the nasal passage, it dissolves in the mucous lining, and it is then detected by olfactory receptors on the dendrites of the olfactory sensory neurons. And then, after the binding of odorant molecules to receptor, the activated receptor will send a signal to glomeruli. Each glomerulus receives signals from multiple receptors that detect similar odorant features. All the signals from glomeruli will then send to the brain, where the combination of glomeruli activation will encode different chemical features of the odorant. The brain will then essentially put the pieces of activation pattern back together in order to identify and perceive the odor. The categorization of odors. The sense of smell gives rise to the perception of odors, mediated by the olfactory nerve. The olfactory receptor cells are neurons present in the olfactory epithelium, a small patch of tissue at the back of the nasal cavity. This is how the olfactory receptor categorize the odors. One is the olfactory receptor neurons that act as sensory signaling cells. Number 2, cilia. Each neuron has cilia in direct contact with air. Number 3, olfactory nerve that is considered the smell mediator. Number 4, the axon connects the brain to the external air. And last, number 5, odorous molecules which act as a chemical stimulus. The widest range of odors consists of organic compounds, although some simple compounds not containing carbon, such as hydrogen sulfide and ammonia, are also odorants. The perception of an odor effect is a two-step process. First, there is the physiological part, the detection of stimuli by receptors in the nose. The second part is that the stimuli are processed by the region of the human brain which is responsible for olfaction. Because of this, an objective and analytical measure of odor is impossible. While odor feelings are very personal perceptions, individual reactions are related to gender, age, state of health, and personal history. Common odors that people are used to, such as their own body odor, are less noticeable to individuals than external or uncommon odors. This is due to habituation. After continuous odor exposure, the sense of smell fatigues quickly but recovers rapidly after the stimulus is removed. Odors can change due to environmental conditions. For example, odors tend to be more distinguishable in cool, dry air. For example, 'di ba kapag umuulan, mas distinguishable yung smell ng lupa kapag basa siya rather than kapag tuyo, hindi natin siya masyadong naaamoy. Odor perception is a primal sense. The sense of smell enables pleasure, can subconsciously warn of danger, help locate mates, find food, or detect predators. Humans' remarkable sense of smell is just as good as many animals and can distinguish a diversity of odors, approximately 10,000 scents. Here's the different categorizations of primary odors. Like what I've said earlier, here are the description of the 7 primary odors. For musky, it smells like perfumes or aftershaves. For putrid, it smells like rotten eggs. For pungent, it smells like vinegar. And for camphoraceous, it smells like mothballs. For ethereal, it smells like dry cleaning fluid. And for floral, it smells like roses. And for pepperminty, it smells like mint gum. If you can imagine it, that's how the 7 primary odors smells like in real life. Interaction of olfaction and taste. Olfaction, taste, trigeminal receptors together contribute to flavor. During exhalation, olfaction occurs when it comes to detecting flavors, while during inhalation, the proper smell occurs. We have the so-called taste buds, which are receptors that detect taste. Each of these receptors is specially adapted to determine one type of taste sensation. Recent evidence suggests that taste receptors are uniformly distributed across the tongue. The senses of smell and taste combine at the back of the throat. When you taste something before you smell it, the smell lingers internally up to those causing you to smell it. Both smell and taste use chemoreceptors, which essentially mean they are both sensing the chemical environment. In the activation of taste receptors, there are similar receptors within the nose that coordinates with activation of the taste receptors. Like for example, when you eat something, you can tell the difference between sweet and bitter. Although humans commonly distinguish taste as one sense and smell as another, they work together to create the perception of flavor. A person's perception of flavor is reduced if he or she has congested nasal passages. Olfactory disorders. Olfactory dysfunction can be quantitative or qualitative. The quantitative smell disorders refer to disorders in which there is complete or partial loss of olfaction, while the qualitative smell disorders can't be measured and refer to disorders in which there is alternation or distortion in the perception of smell. Quantitative smell disorders includes anosmia, the complete loss of olfaction, and hyposmia, the partial loss of olfaction. These two disorders are classified as quantitative because they can be measured. In qualitative smell disorders, we have anosmia refers to a qualitative olfaction disorder of distorted sense of smell caused by medical and mental situations and include both parosmia and phantosmia. Parosmia. The parosmia refers to a distortion of the perception of an odorant. Odorants smell different from what one remembers. And the phantosmia. The phantosmia refers to the perception of an odor when there is no actual odorant present. When a phantom smell lasts less than a few seconds, the term olfactory hallucination can be used. But what is olfactory hallucination? An olfactory hallucination makes you detect smells that aren't really present in your environment. The odors detected in phantosmia vary from person to person and may be foul or pleasant. They can occur in one or both nostrils. The phantom smell may seem to always be present or it may come and go. We are now on the cutaneous system. But what is cutaneous system? It includes the skin, the heaviest organ in the body. Epidermis is the outer layer of the skin which is made up of dead skin cells. Dermis is below the epidermis and contains 4 kinds of mechanoreceptors that respond to stimuli such as pressure, stretching, and vibration. The cutaneous receptors are the types of sensory receptor found in the dermis or epidermis. They are part of the somatosensory system. The cutaneous receptors includes cutaneous mechanoreceptors, which is responsible for the pressure and vibration, nociceptors, which is responsible for pain, and thermoreceptors, which is responsible for temperature. The cutaneous senses are traditionally thought to comprise 4 recognized submodalities that relate tactile, thermal, painful, and pruritic information to the central nervous system, but there is growing evidence for the presence of a 5th modality that conveys positive affective or pleasant properties of touch. We have the thermoreceptor, nociceptors, chemoreceptors, and cutaneous mechanoreceptors as the sensory receptors in the skin. In cutaneous mechanoreceptors, we have the Ruffini's end organ or skin stretched, and bulbs of cross or cold, Meissner's corpuscle or changes in texture, slow vibrations, Pacinian corpuscle or deep pressure, fast vibrations, Merkel's disc or sustained touch and pressure, and free nerve endings. This topic of sensory receptors in the skin and the cutaneous system in general will be discussed by the next reporter. I hope you learned something from me. Thank you for listening.